He entered his own cafe dressed like a construction worker, just to see how ordinary people were treated. But when the blonde waitress whispered 3 quiet words to her colleague, the empire he had built on dignity began to crack. The morning sun slid down the mirrored glass of downtown brew, painting the sidewalk gold. The cafe was already humming, polished shoes clicking against marble, spoons chiming in porcelain cups, laughter smooth as butter. The kind of place where the air itself seemed expensive. A man in a faded gray hoodie paused by the door. His hands were calloused, his jeans slightly torn at the knee, his boots dusted with construction grit. Nobody looked at him twice. Marcus Hale adjusted his cap lower. He had designed every inch of this place. The scent of vanilla bean, the muted jazz, even the height of the counter to make shy customers feel comfortable. But today, he was here as a stranger. He wanted to see if the rumors were true, that his own cafe had begun treating people by how they looked, not who they were. When he stepped inside, warmth met him, and then a wall. Behind the counter, Rachel Moore, the lead waitress, was arranging pastries with the calm grace of someone who'd mistaken arrogance for class. Her lipstick matched the crimson gloss of the coffee machines. She didn't glance up. Marcus stood patiently, hands in pockets, waiting his turn. The couple before him, a man in a designer coat and a woman with diamond studs, were greeted with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Good morning, Mr. Keller. The usual?" "You remembered." "Always," Rachel said sweetly, brushing her hair behind her ear. The cash drawer clicked, the credit card shimmered. Then silence. Marcus stepped forward. "Good morning," he said softly. "Could I get—" Rachel's eyes flicked over him once. Boots, hoodie, rough hands, and then away. Her tone was cold enough to frost the air. "We're busy. Wait your turn." Behind him, no one was waiting. Marcus's pulse slowed. There it was. The small violence that hides behind courtesy. A minute passed, then another. Rachel was chatting with another server, Jennifer, the shift supervisor, about weekend plans and that new crowd ruining the vibe. Marcus heard his name in his head, echoing on 1,000 contracts. Marcus Hale, founder and CEO, Downtown Brew Holdings. He almost laughed at the absurdity. Standing ignored, invisible, in the empire he had built from a campus coffee cart 15 years ago. At the far corner of the counter, a younger waitress, Ava Reed, was polishing a stack of saucers. Her blue eyes flickered between Rachel and the man in the hoodie. Her movements slowed, uncertain. Something about this felt wrong. Marcus spoke again, gently. "Just an Americano. Medium." Rachel didn't even look up. "Cash only today." Marcus's voice remained calm. "Really? That's new?" "System issue," Rachel replied flatly, eyes still on her phone. "You can come back tomorrow, if you can afford it." Ava froze. Rachel smirked. Jennifer laughed under her breath. And then, in that heavy silence that follows quiet cruelty, Ava whispered to Tony, the young barista beside her, not loud but not soft enough to be missed. "This isn't right." 3 words. Marcus heard them clear as glass shattering. Something inside him stilled, a silence deeper than anger. He had spent his life proving that dignity could be built like architecture, line by line, cup by cup, policy by policy. Now, standing under his own logo, he realized how easily one person's poison could rot a foundation. Rachel finally turned, sliding a paper cup across the counter. No saucer, no napkin, just a dismissive flick of the wrist. $14. Marcus blinked. 14? "Special roast," she lied. "I'll take it," he said quietly, placing a 20 on the counter. "Keep the change." Her lips curled. "Generous." He took the cup, thin, flimsy, lukewarm, and walked to a corner table. The porcelain cups on every other table glowed under the lights, a quiet mockery. He sipped the coffee, bitter as iron, and watched the choreography of indifference unfold. A woman in a thrifted jacket was ignored. A teenager with a heavy accent was told to wait. Rachel smiled only for men in suits. Jennifer's laughter covered the silence that followed each humiliation. Ava moved differently, cautious, ashamed. She served gently, eyes low, as if she were apologizing on behalf of the room. Marcus set down his cup and looked at his reflection in the window, a construction worker staring back from the glass of his own cafe. His hand trembled slightly as he pulled out his phone and opened a secure app. A live feed flickered to life, the hidden cameras he'd installed last month after anonymous tips from customers. He saw it all again from another angle: Rachel's sneer, Jennifer's whisper, Ava's hesitation. He pressed record. The sound of the jazz track swelled softly, like irony. When he finally rose to leave, Ava's eyes met his. She looked scared, not of him, but for him. Her lips parted as if to say something, but she only whispered again, barely audible, "I'm sorry." Marcus gave a faint nod. "Don't be." Outside, the cold bit through his jacket. The city moved around him. Cars, chatter, life oblivious to injustice performed in daylight. He took a long breath, letting the bitterness dissolve on his tongue. Then he made the call. "James," he said. "Yeah?" "It's me, Downtown Brew. We have a problem." The line clicked. A long pause. "How bad?" "Bad enough to rewrite everything." And as the morning light climbed over the city, Marcus Hale, the man who had built an empire on kindness, began preparing for war. The next morning, the city glimmered like glass rinsed clean after rain. But inside Downtown Brew, the shine felt rehearsed. The cafe's chandeliers scattered light over marble tables, and laughter dripped from the ceiling like warm honey. To anyone passing by, it looked perfect, the kind of place where excellence was served with foam art and a smile. But Marcus Hale, sitting by the window in his same worn hoodie, knew better. He stirred his coffee slowly, watching the liquid swirl like a storm contained. The cup, again, was paper. Thin. Cheap. Disposable. Just like the dignity he'd seen discarded yesterday. Across the room, Rachel Moore floated between tables, her perfume slicing through the air like expensive contempt. She smiled at a man in a tailored navy suit, leaned a little too close when she spoke, her laughter bright as glass breaking. To everyone else, she was the face of hospitality. To Marcus, she was the rot beneath porcelain. "Table 9 wants almond milk," called Tony Evans, the young barista. His tone was neutral, too neutral, like someone walking a tightrope. Rachel didn't turn. "Tell them we're out." Tony hesitated. "We still have a carton." Her eyes flicked toward him, sharp, warning. "Then hide it. That family doesn't order desserts anyway. Not worth the stock." Marcus watched Tony's jaw tighten. He followed Rachel's gaze to table 9. A young mother and her son, their clothes modest, their smiles careful. He felt that same old ache return, the one that never left since childhood, watching his mother scrub office floors under the watch of people like Rachel. At the counter, Rachel's voice dropped to a whisper, just loud enough for those meant to hear. "You see them?" "Always acting polite but never tipping right. Can't stand that type." Ava Reed, the soft-spoken waitress, froze mid-motion. She was new, still learning the codes of survival. Her fingers trembled around the tray. "Maybe they just don't have much," she said quietly. Rachel laughed, low, cruel, the kind of laugh that needs witnesses. "Then they shouldn't come here. Downtown Brew's not a shelter." A few customers glanced up, sensing tension but pretending not to. Politeness was easier than confrontation. Marcus's hands tightened around his cup. He could feel his pulse in his fingertips. The hum of the espresso machine seemed to sync with the rhythm of his anger, and still, he didn't move. He let the scene unfold, each second another nail in the coffin of illusion. When the mother finally stood to leave, apologizing for something she hadn't done, Rachel called after her. "Next time, maybe try our drive-thru. It's faster." The woman's cheeks flushed red as she hurried her son out. Tony turned away, shame heavy on his face. Marcus exhaled slowly, a long, invisible sigh that tasted of disbelief. He pulled out his phone beneath the table. The hidden camera feed from the night before was clear. But this was worse. He typed a note to himself. Patterns, not accidents. Ava approached with a cleaning cloth. "Would you like a refill, sir?" Her voice was small but sincere. Marcus looked up. Her eyes were pale blue, tired but kind. He nodded. "Yes, please." She poured from the pot, careful not to spill. Her hands shook slightly. He watched her eyes dart to Rachel, who was now busy chatting with Jennifer near the register, laughing over something on her phone. "You don't seem happy here," Marcus said softly. Ava blinked, startled. "It's not my place to complain." "Sometimes it has to be," he replied. Her lips parted, as if she wanted to say something, then she only whispered, "You have no idea what happens when no one's watching." Marcus felt a chill. "Then show me." Ava's gaze flicked toward the security camera in the corner, then back to him. "They turn those off after 9, she said quietly. "That's when things get worse." She stepped back, lowering her voice. "Be careful. People who speak up don't stay long here." Marcus's heart thudded once, not with fear, but with certainty. The cancer in his company had roots, deep ones. Later, as the afternoon crowd thinned, Rachel leaned against the counter, scrolling through her phone. Jennifer approached, lowering her voice. "You heard about the new regional audit? They're checking service reports." "Let them," Rachel smirked. "We've got nothing to hide." "Except your attitude," Tony muttered from the machine. Rachel shot him a look that could curdle milk. "Watch your mouth, barista boy. I could have you replaced before your next paycheck." Marcus watched the exchange. His pulse steady now, cold, focused. Every word, every sneer, every deliberate humiliation was being captured by the small camera hidden in his jacket button. He remembered what his mother used to say when he was young and angry at the world. "Don't shout at injustice, Marcus. Document it." He smiled faintly. "I'm doing just that, Mom," he murmured. When he left the cafe, the city had shifted tones. The light colder, the air sharper. He walked without haste, turning a corner where the reflection of downtown Brew gleamed across a puddle. For the first time he saw it as it truly was, beautiful from afar, but cracked beneath the surface. His phone buzzed. James Peterson. "Ready when you are?" Marcus typed back. "Meet me at HQ tonight. Bring the contracts and someone from PR. We're about to uncover something rotten." He paused, then added, "And tell Dr. Hale to draft a new clause. I want discrimination listed under financial fraud, because that's what it is. Theft of humanity." He slipped the phone into his pocket and kept walking, past glass towers that reflected his own cafe like a kingdom built on borrowed light. The wind picked up, scattering coffee cups along the curb. One of them, thin, white, disposable, rolled to his feet. He stared at it for a long moment, then stepped on it gently. The sound was small, but final. The night draped itself over Boston like a curtain of dark silk, heavy and absolute. In the top floor of the Hale Tower, light spilled from a single office, its windows glowing like the last candle in a city that had forgotten decency. Marcus Hale stood at the window, phone in hand, staring down at the tiny flickers of traffic below. Each car a moving confession, each red brake light a heartbeat in a city pretending not to feel. He had built everything from nothing. Every bean roasted, every store opened, every smiling barista wearing the Downtown Brew logo was supposed to be a fragment of his mother's dream, a place where kindness was policy. But tonight, that dream felt counterfeit. He pressed the phone to his ear. "James," he said, his voice quieter than usual, the kind of quiet that holds storms inside. "Yeah, I'm here." "We have a problem." James Peterson, his lifelong friend and corporate lawyer, leaned back in his chair at home, rubbing his temples. "How bad?" Marcus turned from the window. "Bad enough to question everything we've built." He explained, the fake smiles, the coded prices, the way Rachel Moore had looked at him like he was dirt on marble. How Ava Reed had whispered, "This isn't right," as if she were trying to breathe decency back into the air. There was a pause on the line, a sound like thought hardening. "You have footage?" "Everything. Audio, timestamps, transaction logs. Enough to sink a corporation." "Good. Because we're going to need it." Marcus smiled bitterly. "We? No, James. They're going to need it. The ones who come after us, every customer who's ever been told they don't belong somewhere clean." He hung up without a goodbye. Then another call, this one to Dr. Patricia Hale, his sister, professor of corporate ethics at Yale, and the only person who could turn outrage into policy. "Patty, it's happening." "You found proof?" "I found rot." "Then don't patch it," she said. "Excise it, publicly." Her words sank deep. He looked again at his reflection in the glass, same gray hoodie, same tired eyes. But behind them burned something sharp. Conviction. By midnight, the conference room was alive. James arrived first, tall, immaculate, smelling faintly of bourbon and resolve. Behind him came David Martinez, a private investigator with a soldier's posture and eyes that catalogued everything. Patricia entered last, her voice low and certain. "Let's make this clean, legal, and unforgettable." Marcus set his phone on the table. The small device played the audio from that morning. Rachel's condescending voice, the fake price, Ava's trembling whisper. Every second played like a crime scene. Nobody spoke until it ended. "You were right," David said softly. "It's systemic, not one rogue employee." "How deep?" "There's a group chat. The elite service squad. Members from other luxury cafes, too. They share methods, even language. They call it the filter." Patricia frowned. "Filter?" "As in filtering customers. The wrong kind of crowd, as they put it." Marcus leaned back, eyes fixed on the ceiling lights. "How many?" "At least 6 active employees across your Boston branches. Maybe more in New York." Silence. Heavy. Deliberate. The kind that rearranges air molecules. "We built Downtown Brew to erase the line between luxury and decency," Marcus said. "Now that line's been painted back, well, with gold leaf." James nodded. "Then we cross it again." They spent the next hour drafting what Marcus called the Internal Reckoning Plan. Step 1. Undercover Revisit. Confirm recurring discrimination. Step 2. Legal authorization to use private investigation footage. Step 3. Emergency board meeting. Reveal evidence. Terminate offenders. Step 4. Public disclosure and new inclusion policy. Patricia added a final line to the document. Step 5. Transform humiliation into education. Marcus stared at it for a long time. "That's good," he whispered. "That's Mom's line." At 2:00 a.m., the city was asleep, but Marcus was not. He walked alone through the marble hallway, his footsteps echoing like memory. On the wall hung a framed photograph of his first coffee cart, a younger version of himself grinning beside a steaming pot, his mother standing behind him, hand on his shoulder. Under the photo, a small brass plaque read, "Respect has no price." He touched the edge of the frame gently, almost as if to steady himself. "You said build something good," he murmured. "I did, but I forgot to guard it." His reflection in the glass looked older than 34, a man carved by ambition, now being re-sculpted by conscience. He walked back to his desk, poured a glass of water, and stared at the growing list on his tablet. Investigate POS codes. Confirm Rachel and Jennifer's network interview. Ava, securely. Retrieve system logs. Draft diversity clause. Each bullet was a promise, not of revenge, but of reckoning. Before dawn, Marcus texted James one final instruction. "We reopen the investigation tomorrow at 10 a.m. I'll go in myself." James replied instantly. "Disguise again?" "Yes. Let her dig her own grave." He placed the phone face down, leaned back, and closed his eyes. The hum of the city below was distant, almost tender. He thought of Ava, the girl who had whispered truth into a room built on lies. He thought of Rachel's laughter, sharp as broken glass. He thought of his mother, who once told him, "Never fight people, fight systems." When the first light touched the skyline, Marcus opened his eyes. Somewhere between fatigue and fury, a new resolve was born, one that would soon turn an ordinary cafe into a courtroom of truth. The following morning broke gray and brittle, like porcelain about to crack. Marcus Hale sat at the head of the conference table in his private office, the blinds half closed against the winter light. The city below glowed with motion, but inside that room, time had slowed to a pulse of quiet fury. On the wall, the Downtown Brew logo shimmered in brushed bronze. Once a symbol of fairness, now an emblem of failure. David Martinez arrived first, carrying a black briefcase and the look of a man who had seen too much. "Morning," he said simply, placing the case on the table. "Show me," Marcus replied. David clicked open the locks. Inside were printed screenshots, USB drives, and a thick folder labeled Elite Service Squad, Internal Communications. He spread the pages like a surgeon laying out instruments. Rachel Moore's name appeared again and again, her messages arrogant, dripping with disdain. "Keep the place clean. No low-end energy. Watch out for the cheap ones. They bring the crowd down. I know how to spot them from a mile away." Each line was a quiet act of violence. James leaned over the table, jaw clenched. She didn't even bother to hide it. David nodded grimly. "It gets worse. They created codes in the POS system to secretly flag customers they deemed undesirable." He flipped to a printed chart, columns of data with cryptic abbreviations. F12, full delay, slow service. S13, service fee adjustment, a hidden price hike. L04, limited cup, meaning paper instead of porcelain. Marcus exhaled slowly. They systematized humiliation. He leaned back in his chair, eyes half closed. For years, he had believed culture could be written, trained, rehearsed, measured like customer satisfaction. But now he understood what his mother meant when she said, "You can teach behavior, but you can't teach heart." James slid his tablet across the table. There's also a private Instagram account, @CaffeineCrown. Rachel runs it. It's full of selfies from the cafe, mocking customers she calls wannabe rich. He tapped to open one photo. Rachel, in uniform, posing beside a marble counter. Caption, "Serving the elite, filtering the rest, brew royalty, hard work life." Marcus stared at the screen. The contrast between the gleaming espresso machine and the cruelty behind the smile made his stomach turn. Patricia, silent until now, adjusted her glasses. "They've turned your brand into a class weapon." "Then we'll use the same weapon to end it," Marcus replied. David inserted a flash drive into Marcus's laptop. The large monitor lit up, a collage of images, voice recordings, transaction data, every click, every whisper preserved. The screen flickered to life with a series of recorded clips. Rachel's voice came through, arrogant and precise. "If they look lost, tell them the Wi-Fi's down. If they don't tip, charge a service fee. It keeps them out next time." Jennifer's laughter followed, low and complicit. Then came Ava's voice, quiet, shaking. "This isn't right, Rachel." "Oh, please," Rachel scoffed. "You'll understand once you've worked here longer." Marcus's throat tightened. Ava's tone, that blend of fear and conscience, reminded him of himself at 21, standing in front of a professor who told him he wasn't MBA material. "Play the rest," Marcus said. David clicked again. Another clip began, Rachel and Jennifer laughing in the staff room. "That guy yesterday? The one in the hoodie? Charged him triple. You should have seen his face." Jennifer giggled. "Bet he didn't even know the menu." Rachel smirked. "Exactly. They never do." The sound filled the room, thick and suffocating. James looked at Marcus carefully. "You all right?" Marcus smiled faintly, but the kind of smile that cuts both ways. "Perfectly. I just heard the confession of my employees humiliating their employer." Patricia stood, pacing. "We can file immediate terminations, issue civil rights violations, and start the disciplinary process." But Marcus shook his head. "Too easy. I don't want this to end in silence. I want it to mean something." He turned to the screen again. Rachel's Instagram selfies still glowing. "She's proud of this. She wants an audience. So let's give her one." David frowned. "What do you mean?" "Tomorrow morning," Marcus said, "we'll hold an all-staff meeting at that branch. Every employee present, every screen recording, every chat log displayed in public. No rumors, no ambiguity, just truth." James hesitated. "You're sure?" "It'll be brutal." "Good," Marcus replied quietly. "Justice should hurt." They finalized the plan before noon. Patricia would document everything for legal protection. David's team would synchronize the footage with payment data. James would prepare termination documents and internal policy revisions. Before leaving, David handed Marcus a final envelope. "One more thing. Rachel's been in contact with a small group from another cafe chain. They share blacklist names, people they deem problem customers. There's a file on it." Marcus opened the folder. Inside, a spreadsheet titled customerfilters.xlsx. Names, descriptions, tags like low class, awkward accent, don't serve after 6 p.m. He closed the file slowly, eyes darkening. "This isn't staff misconduct anymore," he murmured. "It's systemic bias. Organized, profitable, hidden behind lattes. Patricia placed a hand on his shoulder. Then tomorrow, you dismantle it. When the meeting ended, the others left, leaving Marcus alone with the hum of the monitors. He sat back, letting the enormity of it settle in. All his life, he had chased excellence, faster service, better beans, sharper branding. And somewhere in that pursuit, he had forgotten that kindness was not a metric. He stared at the empty espresso cup on the table. The rim was smudged with his own fingerprints, a small reminder that purity never stays pure. He whispered to the room, "You wanted to filter the world, Rachel. Tomorrow I'll filter you, out of my company, and out of the illusion that cruelty is class." Outside, snow began to fall, slow, deliberate, like ash after a quiet fire. The lights of Boston blurred through the glass, and in their reflection, Marcus's face looked both exhausted and renewed. Tomorrow would not just be an exposure, it would be an exorcism. The next day, the city gleamed under a thin veil of snow. Boston had that kind of light that made everything look cleaner than it truly was. A cruel irony Marcus Hale didn't miss as he stood across the street from his own cafe, hood pulled low, gloves hiding the cufflinks that marked his other life. Downtown Brew, flagship branch. The sign still shimmered proudly above the doors, polished and pretentious. To everyone walking past, it was a temple of refinement. To Marcus, it was a crime scene wearing perfume. He waited until 9:55 a.m., watching through the frosted window. Rachel was behind the counter again, posture sharp as ever, her hair tied in a flawless knot. Jennifer Walsh leaned beside her, supervisor badge gleaming under the soft, pendant lights. They laughed, the same rehearsed laughter that once sold luxury through warmth. But Marcus knew now, it was warmth without mercy. He exhaled once, slowly, then stepped inside. The bell chimed. The cafe smelled of roasted beans and deceit. Rachel's smile faltered the moment she saw him. Recognition flickered, then contempt returned. Thin, practiced, venomous. "Oh," she said, her tone dripping honey and disdain. "You're back." Jennifer's gaze followed. "Thought you'd learned your place yesterday?" Marcus didn't respond. He took his spot at the counter and set his wallet on the marble, the same place where he'd been humiliated 2 days earlier. "Americano, please." Rachel crossed her arms. "You again?" "Fine. That'll be $15. "It was 14 last time," he said mildly. "Inflation," she smirked. "You wouldn't understand." Marcus tilted his head. "Try me." A silence rippled through the cafe. Tony Evans, the barista, hesitated behind the machine. His eyes darted between Rachel and the man in the hoodie. Marcus gave him a barely perceptible nod, a silent permission that said, "Do what's right, no matter the cost." Tony swallowed hard, then pressed the espresso lever. Rachel caught the hesitation. "Tony, don't forget the L04 code," she said sharply. Jennifer added, "Yes, make sure it's recorded correctly this time." Marcus heard it. L04, the code for limited cup. Paper only. He smiled. The system was digging its own grave. The espresso machine hissed, steaming like a confession. Tony placed the cup in front of Rachel. She slid it forward with a deliberate lack of grace. "To go," she said flatly. "Actually," Marcus replied, "I'd like to drink it here." Morning light dripped like gold through the frosted glass of downtown Brew, but the cafe was closed to the public. The sign on the door read, "Private event, staff only." Inside, the air was thick with unease. 17 employees stood clustered near the espresso bar, their whispers overlapping in nervous currents. The usual hum of coffee grinders was gone. No music, no customers. Only the faint ticking of the clock above the counter, each second marking the approach of reckoning. Rachel Moore stood in the center of the group, arms folded, confidence like perfume. "It's probably a regional audit," she murmured to Jennifer Walsh, who was scrolling her phone. "Relax, we're fine." Tony Evans avoided their gaze. His hands fidgeted against his apron. Beside him, Ava Reed stood quietly, face pale, her eyes darting toward the door every few seconds. Something in her gut told her that today wasn't about performance reviews. It was Judgment Day. At exactly 9 o'clock a.m., the glass door opened. Marcus Hale walked in, not in his hoodie this time, but in a dark navy Armani suit, crisp white shirt, and leather briefcase in hand. He was followed by James Peterson, Dr. Patricia Hale, and David Martinez, who each carried folders, tablets, and a quiet gravity that settled like a storm cloud in the room. Every whisper died. Rachel blinked, her mind struggling to connect the man before her with the one she'd sneered at 2 days earlier. "Good morning," Marcus said evenly, his voice calm but carrying the weight of finality. "My name is Marcus Hale. I am the founder and owner of Downtown Brew." The silence broke like glass. Several employees gasped. Tony exhaled audibly. Ava's hand flew to her mouth. Rachel's face drained of color. You're the owner?" "I am," Marcus said softly. "And for the past week, I've been your customer." He placed the briefcase on the counter and clicked it open. The sound echoed like a gavel. "Over the last several days," Marcus began, "I've conducted a direct investigation into our flagship branch. What I found was not incompetence. It was cruelty." He nodded to David. The investigator connected a laptop to the cafe's projector. A moment later, the white wall flickered to life, displaying a screenshot of a private chat group. Elite Service Squad. Rachel's name sat boldly at the top. The first message appeared in large letters. "Keep the crowd clean. Filter out the cheap ones." A low murmur ran through the room. Marcus's voice remained steady. "For months, this group has shared methods to discriminate against customers based on appearance, clothing, or perceived wealth. They used coded pricing and targeted humiliation." He clicked to the next slide, a column of POS codes. F12, full delay, S13, service fee adjustment, L04, paper cup only. Jennifer's face went pale. "You used these codes to decide who deserved dignity," Marcus said, "and you used them on me." He turned toward Rachel. 2 days ago, you charged me triple the listed price, denied me porcelain, and mocked me to your colleagues. While I was in disguise, you humiliated the man who signs your paychecks." Rachel took a shaky breath. "Mr. Hale, I didn't know who you were." Marcus's voice cut clean through her excuses. "That's the point." Patricia stepped forward, calm and authoritative. "Under U.S. federal civil rights law, discrimination in service based on perceived social status or racial appearance is illegal," she explained. "What you did was not just unethical. It's a violation of company and federal policy." Rachel's hands trembled. Jennifer swallowed, her composure cracking. "We were just following—" "No," Marcus interrupted. "You were leading, and others followed your example." He gestured to the screen again. A video clip played. Rachel's voice from the hidden recording. "That guy yesterday? The one in the hoodie? Charged him triple. You should have seen his face." Gasps filled the room. Rachel's lips parted, but no words came. "That man," Marcus said quietly, "was me." Ava's eyes brimmed with tears. She stepped forward timidly. "Sir, may I say something?" Marcus nodded. Her voice shook, but she stood tall. I tried to stop it. I told her it wasn't right, but I was scared. I thought I'd lose my job. Marcus's expression softened, a quiet storm breaking into empathy. You did the hardest thing anyone could do, Ava. You spoke when it was dangerous. And because of that, this entire company still has a soul left to save. He turned to the rest of the staff. The measure of a company isn't how it treats the powerful. It's how it treats the invisible. Rachel's voice broke through the silence, brittle and desperate. You can't just fire me. You lied about who you were. That's entrapment. James stepped forward smoothly. Actually, it's legal. The owner of a business has full right to investigate misconduct through direct observation, including undercover operations. You have no legal defense here, Ms. Moore. Marcus handed Rachel and Jennifer 2 sealed envelopes. These are your termination letters, effective immediately. The footage, chat logs, and payment data are being submitted to our legal department and, if necessary, federal authorities. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. Please, Mr. Hale, I... Save it, Marcus said, voice soft but final. You had every chance to stop this. You chose silence. He turned to the rest of the employees. To those who stayed kind, thank you. To those who joined cruelty for comfort, this is your wake-up call. There is no room for discrimination under this roof, not while my mother's name hangs on that wall. He pointed to the framed plaque above the espresso bar. Respect has no price. For a moment, no one spoke. The weight of those words filled the air like incense. Slow, thick, sacred. Then Marcus nodded to James. Clear the records. Prepare public disclosure, and start drafting the new internal protocol. He looked around the room one last time, faces pale, tearful, ashamed. This isn't revenge, he said quietly. It's restoration. As Rachel and Jennifer gathered their things in silence, Tony moved to Marcus's side. Mr. Hale, thank you for not letting this die quietly. Marcus put a hand on his shoulder. You did your part too. It takes courage to serve decency in a place that's forgotten it. Ava watched from across the room, eyes glistening, not with guilt this time, but with something like relief. Marcus picked up his briefcase, turned toward the door, and paused. Clean this place, he said. Not the counters, the culture. And with that, he stepped out into the sunlight, the cold air hitting his face like absolution. It was snowing again. The kind of snow that muted the world, soft, clean, undeservedly pure. But inside downtown Brew's flagship branch, the air was dense with the aftertaste of revelation. The words, "You're terminated for cause," still hung in the silence like gunpowder smoke. Rachel Moore stood frozen near the counter, her uniform neat, her expression crumbling. Jennifer Walsh sat on a stool, face in her hands, mascara streaking down her wrists. The rest of the staff stood scattered, stunned, trying not to look at them. Even the lights seemed dimmer, ashamed to illuminate what was left. Marcus Hale stood at the center, his suit impeccable, his face unreadable, but inside, something heavy shifted. Not satisfaction, not triumph. It was grief. Because beneath all his fury, Marcus still believed in people. He'd built an empire on that belief. And now, watching Rachel's arrogance dissolve into panic, he felt the bitter ache of watching humanity collapse under its own vanity. "You can't do this!" Rachel's voice broke, high and frantic. "You can't just ruin my career!" Marcus turned, his tone calm as winter rain. "I'm not ruining your career, Rachel. You did that yourself. Every time you made someone feel small to make yourself feel important. I was under pressure. So was every decent person who refused to become cruel. Jennifer lifted her head. I only followed the system, Mr. Hale. I didn't start it. Marcus's eyes met hers. Cold, precise. And when did following become enough to excuse participation? The words landed like judgment. Jennifer broke down, sobbing quietly. Behind her, Tony stood stiff, trembling with a different emotion. Relief. Ava rested a gentle hand on his arm, whispering something that sounded like, "It's over." Dr. Patricia Hale stepped forward, professional, composed. Ms. Moore, Ms. Walsh, she said, you will receive official documentation from our legal department by tomorrow morning. As of this moment, you are barred from all company property. Federal labor authorities have been informed. Rachel's knees buckled. She caught herself on the counter, laughing bitterly. You people think you're saints? You think you can fix prejudice with paperwork? Patricia's reply was simple. No. But we can stop paying for it. Marcus closed the briefcase. You have 10 minutes to collect your things. Rachel's eyes darted around, looking for sympathy, finding none. The same employees she had mocked now looked at her with something between pity and contempt. For years, she had ruled this cafe through fear disguised as standards. Now, stripped of power, she looked suddenly small. As she walked past Ava, their eyes met. You think you're better than me now? Rachel hissed. Ava didn't flinch. No, she said quietly. Just kinder. Rachel turned away, face twisted, gathering her coat and phone with shaking hands. Jennifer followed silently, her sobs soft and childlike. The door opened, cold wind rushing in, snow drifting over the marble floor. When it closed behind them, it was as if the cafe exhaled for the first time in years. Marcus stood there watching the empty doorway. The weight of justice felt heavier than injustice itself. James Peterson broke the silence. You did the right thing. Marcus didn't look up. The right thing always feels wrong at first. Patricia gathered her papers. Now the rebuilding begins. He nodded slowly. Yes, but this time, not just with policy, with people. He turned toward the staff, the ones who had stayed. Some looked ashamed, some grateful, some tearful. But they were listening, truly listening. I built Downtown Brew to be more than a business, he said softly. It was supposed to be a mirror of dignity. Somewhere my mother would have felt welcome, even in her janitor's uniform. His voice trembled, then steadied. If we lost that, we lost everything. But you, the ones who still believe in kindness, you'll help me rebuild it, from the inside out. Tony nodded, voice low. You can count on us. Ava's eyes glistened. We'll make it right, sir. I promise. Marcus smiled faintly, weary, but real. Then let's start today. Outside, the press vans had already begun to gather. News of the scandal was spreading. Leaked footage, transcripts, anonymous quotes. Through the window, Marcus could see the flicker of camera flashes. James checked his phone. They're going to make this public within the hour. Marcus exhaled. Let them. Patricia frowned. You're not worried? He shook his head. Truth can survive exposure. Lies can't. He stepped closer to the window. Beyond the glass, snow fell onto the company sign. Soft, relentless, beautiful. They thought cruelty was culture, he murmured. Now they'll learn what accountability feels like. He turned back to his team. We'll issue a public statement in 2 hours, full transparency, every detail. And we'll announce a new internal system, one that ensures this never happens again. James smirked faintly. You already have a name for it, don't you? Marcus nodded. The Hale Protocol. Patricia smiled. Strong, legal, symbolic. It's more than policy, Marcus said. It's memory, the kind that keeps a company human. As he left the cafe, the snow fell harder. On the street, people had begun to gather, murmuring his name, taking photos. Some whispered praise, others judgment. But Marcus didn't stop. He walked straight ahead, coat collar up against the wind, face steady. Behind him, through the fogged glass, he could see Ava and Tony cleaning tables together, talking softly. Laughter starting to return, tentative but sincere. And for the first time in days, Marcus felt something stir beneath the exhaustion. Not pride, not vengeance, renewal. The cafe had collapsed, but beneath the rubble something more honest was being born. And sometimes, he thought, collapse isn't the end of a structure. It's the moment it begins to rebuild itself on truth. By noon, downtown Brew had become a storm. Not a storm of wind or rain, but of flashbulbs, headlines, and voices shouting over each other. Outside the glass doors, journalists pressed forward like a tide, microphones raised, faces eager for scandal. Marcus Hale stood in front of the cafe's sign, his sign, and watched the reflection of his own name shimmer in the snow-melted pavement. For 15 years it had symbolized warmth. Now it was front-page shame. He didn't flinch. Inside, the staff huddled by the espresso bar, watching him through the window, some anxious, some proud. He had chosen not to hide behind a press release. If a storm was coming, he would walk into it himself. Mr. Hale, is it true you were undercover? Did you really fire 2 senior staff on the spot? Was this a publicity stunt for a new campaign? The questions collided like hail. Marcus raised his hand slightly. Silence rippled through the crowd. Not absolute, but enough. For those asking, he began, voice low and steady. This isn't a campaign. This isn't spin. This is an apology. That single sentence cut through the cold. The cameras steadied. The city listened. I built Downtown Brew on the belief that dignity is universal. That every cup, every customer, every smile mattered. But somewhere along the way, that belief was forgotten. We let arrogance disguise itself as excellence. And that is on me. Behind him, the employees shifted, shame, surprise, relief mixing in the air. When you run a business, your name isn't just on the sign, Marcus continued. It's on every action that happens inside. So if this cafe hurt people, then I did. And now, I'm fixing it. Patricia stepped forward beside him, her tone clipped and clear. Effective immediately, we are launching what will be known as the Hale Protocol, a company-wide reform to eliminate discrimination at every level of service. Anonymous reporting systems, independent audits, diversity training, and legal accountability. This isn't about image, it's about integrity. Flashes burst again. A journalist called out, "Are you worried this will destroy your brand?" Marcus smiled faintly, tired but unyielding. If truth destroys your brand, then it was never worth saving. The quote would appear in every major paper by nightfall. As the questions waned, he glanced through the cafe window. Inside, Ava Reed was helping an elderly woman with her coat, offering her a seat near the fire. Tony poured coffee into a porcelain cup, not paper. The sight steadied him. For the first time, the cafe felt alive again. He turned back to the reporters. "We're not just reopening a cafe," he said. "We're reopening a promise." Then he stepped back through the glass doors, leaving the storm outside. The staff straightened as he entered. Ava wiped her hands nervously on her apron. "You didn't have to do that, sir." You could have sent PR. Marcus smiled faintly. And let a headline tell my story? No, Ava. The only thing worse than silence is letting someone else speak for your conscience. Tony glanced up. The phones are blowing up, sir. Some customers say they'll never come back. Others are calling you a hero. Marcus shrugged lightly. Let them call me what they want. Just make sure that when they do come back, we give them the respect they deserve. He turned toward the espresso machine, that gleaming altar of performance, and rested a hand on its warm steel. We'll serve truth now, he said quietly. One cup at a time. As the day unfolded, the storm outside grew into something larger, a conversation. By evening, hashtags flooded social media. Respect is policy. The Hale Protocol, coffee without prejudice. And somewhere amid the noise, a message stood out. Was served by the owner of Downtown Brew himself today. He poured my coffee and said, "Thank you for trusting us again." That's leadership. Later, as the cafe closed, Marcus lingered by the door. Patricia was packing her papers. James was fielding calls from investors, but Marcus was staring at the counter, at the space where Rachel used to stand, where words sharper than knives once cut through the morning air. Now there was quiet, and in that quiet, the faint sound of Ava laughing with Tony as they cleaned up. The kind of laughter that didn't humiliate, but healed. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting it wash over him. There was still anger, still damage, still public outrage waiting beyond tomorrow's headlines. But inside these walls, something sacred had survived. Patricia came to his side. You realize this isn't over, she said softly. The media will come back. Lawsuits might follow. Marcus nodded. Let them. Justice doesn't end with applause. It ends when change becomes habit. She smiled faintly. You sound like Mom. He smiled too, the kind that reached his eyes. I hope so. As he stepped outside, snowflakes clung to his coat like fragments of quiet applause. The crowd had gone. The storm was gone. What remained was a stillness, fragile but full of promise. He turned to look at the sign one last time before heading home. The golden letters of Downtown Brew gleamed under the streetlight. Beneath them, in the reflection of the glass door, he saw not the man who'd been humiliated days ago, but the man who had listened and learned. Sometimes storms don't destroy. They cleanse. The blizzard had passed. In its place came a strange kind of quiet, the kind that only follows public storms, when outrage begins to fade and reflection takes its place. It had been 6 weeks since the day Marcus Hale stood outside Downtown Brew and faced the world. 6 weeks since he turned humiliation into policy, disgrace into discipline, and noise into something resembling grace. Now the cafe smelled of renewal. Fresh paint, warm cinnamon, a faint hum of jazz. Where arrogance once echoed, conversation now flowed. Easy, unguarded, human. Marcus stood in the corner booth, reviewing the new manual spread open before him. The Hale Protocol, a guide to dignity in service. The cover was simple, cream white, embossed gold letters. But inside it was more than a handbook. It was an apology written in structure. Rule 1. Every voice matters, from barista to guest. Rule 2. Equality is not branding, it's behavior. Rule 3. Respect is measurable, teachable, enforceable. And beneath those rules, a single phrase his mother once whispered while cleaning an office at dawn. Kindness is the only luxury everyone can afford. He closed the manual, exhaling softly. For the first time, the words didn't feel like theory. They felt like law. Across the cafe, Ava Reed was conducting the morning briefing. She stood in front of the team, confident, radiant, no longer the timid girl who whispered, "This isn't right," under her breath. "Remember," she said, "we don't just serve coffee. We serve belonging. If you see something unfair, you speak. If you see someone ignored, you notice. That's the code." Tony Evans, now assistant manager, grinned from the counter. "And no more secret POS codes, right?" The staff laughed. Ava smiled. "Right. The only code left is respect." The laughter was light, but it carried meaning, a sound that felt like repair. Marcus watched from afar, a quiet pride stirring in his chest. Ava had become the voice he once needed when he was young, the one who believed systems could be rewritten. In the afternoon, James Peterson stopped by with coffee in hand. "You're trending again," he said, placing his phone on the table. Marcus chuckled dryly. "Good or bad?" "Both, which means it's working." On the screen, articles glowed. From scandal to standard, the Hale Protocol reshapes corporate ethics. Can dignity be scaled? One CEO thinks so. Marcus scrolled past the praise and the cynicism. Both felt distant now. "Let them argue," he said. "If they're talking about respect, that's already a win." James nodded. "Investors are impressed." "But are you?" Marcus looked toward the counter, where Ava was teaching a new hire how to froth milk without rushing. The boy was nervous. She was patient. "Yes," Marcus said finally. "For the first time, I think I am." Later that week, the first branch outside Boston adopted the protocol. Then another. Then a dozen more. Every cafe hung the same framed plaque near the entrance. The Hale Protocol. "We serve dignity first. Everything else is optional." Customers began to notice. They spoke of how the baristas looked them in the eyes, how the staff remembered their names, how the space felt warmer, even when the coffee was the same. What Rachel Moore had turned into hierarchy, Marcus had turned into harmony. One evening, after the last customer left, Marcus gathered the remaining team for a surprise. He carried a small wooden box and set it on the counter. "You've all earned this," he said softly. "It belonged to my mother." Inside lay an old name tag, edges worn, the engraving faint but legible. Donna Hale, cleaning staff. The room fell silent. Marcus's voice trembled slightly. "She never got to drink from the porcelain cups she polished. She never sat where she cleaned. I built this place so people like her would never feel lesser again. But I failed. Until now." Ava reached out, touching the tag with reverence. "She'd be proud." Marcus smiled, a small, breaking smile that carried both grief and peace. "Maybe. But I'd rather this be her legacy. Not the shame, not the scandal, but the change." He placed the tag into the cafe's glass display, right beside the first prototype of the Hale Protocol. The inscription beneath it read, "For those who cleaned the floors so others could stand tall." That night, as the team left one by one, Marcus lingered at the counter, sipping from a porcelain cup, the kind Rachel once withheld. Outside, the snow had melted. The streets shimmered with reflected light, each puddle carrying a fragment of the world he was trying to mend. He looked at the empty tables, at the warm glow spilling from the lamps, and thought of his mother's voice. "Never fight people, Marcus. Fight the rules that make them cruel." He smiled. He was finally doing exactly that. As he locked up, a man in a delivery jacket approached. "Hey, are you the owner?" "I am." The man hesitated. Just wanted to say, I was one of those customers who stopped coming, but I came back today and it felt different. Marcus nodded. That's the goal. No, the man said, smiling faintly. It felt human. Don't lose that. Marcus watched him walk away, his breath visible in the cold air. Then he turned off the lights, leaving only the soft glow of the plaque by the window. Respect has no price. And for the first time since the scandal began, Marcus felt the words were true again. 6 months had passed since the storm. Boston had bloomed into late spring, street lamps dressed in lilac light, and the air tasting faintly of thawed hope. At Downtown Brew, the hum of conversation flowed like a soft river through the room. Laughter blended with the hiss of steam and the rustle of notebooks. For the first time in years, the cafe sounded like what Marcus Hale had always imagined it should. Human. He stood by the window, a porcelain cup in hand. The reflection that met him in the glass looked older, yes, but also lighter. The lines around his eyes weren't just from exhaustion anymore. They were the markings of a man who had survived his own disillusionment. The scandal had burned him clean. Behind the counter, Ava Reed was training 2 new hires. Her voice was calm, certain, the way truth becomes when it no longer trembles. At Downtown Brew, she said, we don't serve customers. We welcome guests. That's the difference. The young barista nodded, nervous but smiling. Tony laughed softly as he wiped down the machines. You sound like the founder, he teased. Ava looked toward Marcus. No, she said. I just learned from him what leadership sounds like. Marcus raised his cup slightly in salute. She returned the gesture, a silent conversation between 2 people who had once stood on opposite sides of courage. The cafe had changed in every way. The old elite service squad sign-in system was gone, replaced with a transparent digital board where employees could post anonymous suggestions. Weekly integrity meetings were now part of the routine. The new Hale protocol had become company law. But more than that, it had become culture. Customers felt it too. There were no whispers anymore, no hierarchy in tone. Even the air seemed freer, as if the cafe itself had exhaled the last of its poison. And above the counter hung a new plaque. To my mother, Donna Hale, who taught me that dignity is not negotiable. Later that afternoon, a delivery arrived, a small wooden crate stamped with the logo of a luxury porcelain company. Marcus opened it himself. Inside were 20 handcrafted cups, each engraved with gold lettering along the rim. Respect is policy. He smiled. These were not for sale. They were to be given, as gifts to those who had stayed when everything fell apart. He called the team together. Ava and Tony came first, followed by the others, faces that had once carried fear, now marked by quiet pride. Marcus lifted one of the cups, its white surface gleaming in the soft light. 6 months ago, he said, we were broken. Not because of a scandal, but because we forgot who we were. You all helped me remember. These cups are symbols, not of success, but of survival. Because every act of respect, no matter how small, rebuilds the world a little. He handed the first cup to Ava. For the 3 words that saved this company. Her eyes glistened. You mean... Yes, he smiled. This isn't right. You said it when everyone else stayed silent. A hush fell over the room. Ava held the cup like something sacred. Tony clapped softly. Others followed. The sound was gentle, like rain on glass. When the team dispersed, Marcus remained by the window, the last cup still in his hand. He turned it slowly, tracing the golden letters with his thumb. Through the glass, he could see the city moving, people walking briskly, a mother holding her child's hand, a janitor pushing a mop bucket across the street. He watched her pause, stretch her back, then smile at a stranger who held the door open. Something in that small moment, that unacknowledged grace, made his throat tighten. He whispered almost to himself, "That's who I built this for." A soft voice came from behind him. "Sir?" It was Ava. She held another cup. His. "You forgot yours," she said, smiling. Marcus took it. "No," he replied. "I was waiting for it." They sat together for a moment, just watching the late light spill across the tables. "You know," Ava said, "when people talk about you now, they don't call you the man who exposed discrimination. They call you the man who fixed it." Marcus chuckled. "That's generous. I didn't fix it. I just stopped pretending it wasn't there." Ava nodded thoughtfully. "That's how fixing begins." Evening crept in. The last customers left, the lights dimmed, and the city's reflection turned the cafe window into a mirror. Marcus saw his own image beside Ava's, two figures framed in warm light, cups in hand, like bookends to a story that had hurt but healed. He raised his cup toward the glass, toward the reflection, toward the ghosts of his mistakes, toward the mother who once scrubbed other people's floors and told her son to keep his soul clean. "To her," he whispered. "To us." Ava raised hers, too. "To every cup that teaches respect." They drank. The jazz record hummed low. Outside, the wind moved through the streets, not cruel, not cold, but kind. And for the first time, Marcus understood that redemption wasn't a single moment. It was a daily ritual, poured fresh, served warm, and shared honestly. When he turned off the lights and stepped outside, the cafe's reflection shimmered in the dark glass door, his face beside his mother's inscription. He saw not a businessman, not a victim of scandal, but a man who had finally learned the hardest truth. That success means nothing if the people who serve it lose their humanity, and that sometimes one act of cruelty can destroy an empire, but one act of decency can rebuild it. Marcus smiled, tucking the porcelain cup beneath his coat. The city wind caught his scarf, carrying the faint scent of roasted coffee and rain. As he walked away, the sign above him glowed softly against the night. "Downtown Brew, where every cup is equal," and in the reflection of the window behind him the words, "Respect is policy," burned like gold.